lectures and all that this morning, so we're going to try to make sure you all can hear me. I had poor last tour yesterday. I lost it. God love them. All right, so who's ready to learn a little bit about the Civil War here in Wrightsville? All right, good, because that's what you get whether you like it or not. You don't got a choice. Doors closed, Trolley starting. You're stuck with me. And I don't have my watch, so time doesn't matter. I'm kidding. I will let you go by 3 o'clock today. Okay. Am I kidding on that one? Who knows? No, I'm kidding. I promise. We have to be back here by 12 so I can pick up the next group of people. Those sorry people, I'll tell you. Don't tell them what they're in store for. So, who knows what happened here on June 28th, 1863? Who can tell me? We're not in school, just yell it out.
The burning bridge.
Burning of the bridge. You are correct. Does anybody know why the bridge was burned?
Super.
Keep who from going to Philadelphia? Us? And I don't know if we like our chances. The Confederates. I'm just kidding. Listen, I have a very bad sense of humor. If you have any questions during the tour, please do not hesitate to interrupt me. I'm okay with that. If you yell out and I don't hear you because I am deaf, please pull this cord. I will try to hear that as well. Or you can raise your hands. I'll pretend I'm a school teacher. That would be terrible if I was. Alright, I'm going to highlight something that I don't know if a lot of you know about. I'm telling you, Andre has been trying to get me out of this seat all weekend. And he might be successful today. We'll see. This book, Flames Beyond Gettysburg by Scott Mingus. One of the best books written about what happened here 162 years ago. His son was one of my college professors. And I can tell you from experience, Scott Mingus really knows his stuff when it comes to local history. So if you really want to get in depth what happens here, you can pick up this book at the Columbia Crossing, Amazon, you name it, you can find it. You can go to Gettysburg and find it. Yes, they allow this book to be sold. Alright, we're going to start with why Columbia? Why Wrightsville? Why does Susquehanna? Does anybody know why Lee wanted the Susquehanna River to be taken?
He could cross over to Harrisburg and Philadelphia.
Go up to Harrisburg. Harrisburg had a really big arms manufacturing plant up there. They were producing guns, artillery, ammunition, and that is something Lee absolutely needed for his army. You see, at the beginning of June 1863, Ulysses S. Grant was hammering the South, and he was winning victory after victory down there. So they needed to pull resources from somewhere else that wasn't Mississippi. And Harrisburg was that option for them. So Lee decided he was going to strike north, not for the first time, but for a second time. His first time failed, but he was going to really, really try his best to get up here again, and he succeeds. So much that the Union Army of the Potomac doesn't even know Lee left Virginia. Yeah, Lee snuck 77,000 people out of Virginia without the Union Army knowing. That's how observant we are. He uses the Blue Ridge Mountains through Virginia into West Virginia, through the Shenandoah, into Maryland, and into Pennsylvania. In Chambersburg, he will tell his Second Corps commander, Richard Ewell, you sent 2 divisions north to Harrisburg and send 1 east and get me across the Susquehanna River. Ewell says, okay. But this is the first time Ewell has ever had a campaign as a corps commander. The original corps commander of 2nd Corps had passed away back in May. So this is his first go at it. And he sends Jubal Early's division headed through Gettysburg. He'll ransack York. And he is to come to Wrightsville. And he take the Susquehanna, get into Columbia, and head north and flank Harrisburg. Only we had Colonel Frick here. Now, Jacob Frick was a veteran of the Civil War, and he had been discharged. The 129th was sent home after their service. But when Lee came into Pennsylvania, he and a bunch of other veterans from the 129th decided they were going to re-enlist into the state militia of the 27th Pennsylvania Volunteers. And he comes to Columbia and he takes total control of everything in Columbia. Bridges, businesses, people, he's in charge. And a lot of people start to enlist into the militia in town. But when Wrightsville was the first to go, a lot of people fled. There wasn't a lot of men here left to fight for Wrightsville. So Columbia had to defend not only Columbia, but they had to defend Wrightsville as well. A lot of the only people that were left in Wrightsville were women, and women weren't allowed to fight. Technically, they weren't allowed to fight. Did they sneak into the army? Sure did. That's us women. So Gordon is hanging out in Wrightsville. As he enters, there's a little girl, and she will go up to him, and she'll give him a bouquet of flowers. Does anybody know what's in that bouquet of flowers that she gives to General Gordon? A note. If you sadly had to listen to me all day yesterday, you know the answer to all my questions. Now, these piers or pillars, as however you see them or what you call them, these are the original pillars of the bridge that was burnt exactly 162 years ago yesterday. We're all going swimming, people. Don't worry, I'm a lifeguard. Honest to God, that is my day job. I will make sure you're all safe.
It's a duck sport.
So Gordon is given a note, and in that note, it says exactly what Colonel Frick has to defend the river towns. Every troop, how many troops there are, and where they're located. Now, we are not on the extreme right flank of Frick's line. Frick's line will end miles that way, down to close where the Accomack Inn is. Now, if you do venture out that way, instead of turning down around Accomack, go to the left and go down that very, very small, tight lane, and about 1.5 miles to 2 miles, and you will see on your right-hand side an unknown buried Confederate soldier. Now, some people speculate that it was from the other 2 divisions up in Harrisburg, and he washed down. But there wasn't much fighting up that way. I believe he came from Gordon's brigade, because we were here, we had rifles, and we were taking pop shots at Gordon's men. And he was one of the unlucky ones that didn't get to make it. But he probably would have died on July 1st anyway. So, you know, he just punched his ticket before. Anyway, you can go out and visit him. He is unknown. You can make your own backstory for him. Be creative. I named him Henry. He's 6'3", blonde hair, blue eyes, Georgian, you know. But that's that's for a different day. So Gordon now has exactly what he needs. He has Colonel Frick's defensive measures on a piece of paper in front of him. He'll ride up over that way to where County Line Quarry sits, just on the other side of the bridge, up on a hill, and he looks down and he starts to make his game plan. And he's like, all right, so if it's a shape of a U, we're gonna flank them. And what I mean by flank is you're gonna take at the very end of the line, you're gonna push them in, okay? Now that movement during the Civil War is commonly used, and it is successful. That's why they keep going back to it over and over and over again. So he does, he sends troops out this way, troops out this way, but he sends a very small force in the middle. And he goes, as they're pushing in, I want you guys to push down towards the bridge. And you go, okay. Well, out that way is the 26th Pennsylvania Militia under Colonel Sickles. Now, if you know the Battle of Gettysburg, it is not that same Sickles, okay? That Colonel Sickles actually fights, and he's actually pretty good at it. The other one, not so much. But again, that's for a later discussion. But Sickles over there, he sees the entire Confederates move, their movement, and he sees them pushing, but they flank him so far, they go completely around him. And they're pushing up, and they get all taken prisoner of war. Every single one from the 26th Pennsylvania Militia is taken prisoner. And they keep pushing in. But Colonel Frick learned his lesson from a previous battle in 1862 in a small town called Fredericksburg. Now, does anybody know what I'm talking about when I say urban warfare? What is urban warfare? I see a lot of heads going. What's urban warfare?
Street to street fighting.
Street to street fighting. House to house. Before Fredericksburg, that style of warfare, I have to tell you, was never taught. That was something that was learned on the streets of Fredericksburg. It was not taught to Lee or any other soldier that went to West Point or VMI. Okay, that was on the field, on the job training, right then and there. But Colonel Frick fought at Fredericksburg, and he learned that lesson, what it would be like to fight through the streets. And he knew here that the Confederates would have to go through the streets of Wrightsville. So what does he do? If you take battle lines, which are really long lines, 2, 3 deep, and you make the streets narrow to be about this wide, you can't fit a battle line through that. You're gonna bottle them up. And that was his plan all along. Because he knew his state militia could not go up against veteran soldiers, battle-tested veteran soldiers that have been fighting since 1861. And these soldiers were good. Okay? They will not stop. They will keep pushing. So he bottles them up in the streets of Wrightsville. And we're going to go and we're going to tour some of these streets. We're going to see just how narrow they are now. And then you can use your imagination to just see how much more narrow they got when they put logs and railroad tracks and iron ores and lumber from the lumber mill that was located on the other side of the bridge in these streets to really make them narrow. So they get, Colonel Frick has one more trick up his sleeve though. He now has Robert Crane, who is an architect in Columbia, and he said, go pick men that you trust. Crane goes, okay, so he does. And their job is to go to the fourth span of the bridge. Now, if you count the piers, and you count to number 4, that would have been the fourth span of that bridge. They start pulling floorboards, walls, roofs, and they stick dynamite in them. Their goal was to make the bridge impassable. Now that is a big difference than destruction. They didn't want to destroy this bridge. This bridge was supposed to be here long after 1863. Spoiler alert, doesn't happen. All right. So the Confederates, though, they didn't do a very good enough job. And the Confederates are still making their way onto that bridge. And I know you don't like Confederate soldiers either. Anyway, so they're coming, and Frick has to go back to Craig and says, you guys need to go back out there and do something else, because they're coming. And we cannot fight them. Because if they would have gotten to Columbia, I can honestly tell you, it would have been a bloodbath. What happens at Gettysburg would have happened here, and we would need a passport to get to Maryland. Okay? So they go back out, and they're pulling everything. They're dismantling that bridge. And they make a really big pile of debris. But they didn't have gasoline back then. They had kerosene, and they had gunpowder. Now, can anybody tell me what happens when you mix the two together?
Fire.
Fire. Boom. It is the 4th of July without it being the 4th of July, people. Yes. Now, there was a free African American part of that, what we call the bridge burners in Columbia. His name was Jacob Miller. And he told everybody else, get off this bridge. I will stand here. That takes a lot of guts. Because if he were to get captured, he's going back down south. Okay? He lights a cigar, and he's watching Gordon's troops start running onto this bridge. And he rolls it into a piece of paper, because if he were to just drop it, that cigar could go out. So he now lights that piece of paper, and he drops it onto that pile of gunpowder and kerosene and debris. And it goes boom. But that doesn't necessarily destroy the entire bridge. That part sure catches fire. Gordon's over here saying to the townspeople, ain't anybody got buckets, pails, anything that we can use to put the bridge out? Everyone goes, no, don't own a bucket. I'm too poor. And then Mother Nature.
Wouldn't give it to you anyway.
they just, yeah. No, they had it. They just weren't giving it. But Mother Nature destroyed our bridge. She had a sense of humor that day. And a gust of wind comes up the Susquehanna. And it blows the fire. That is what ignites the bridge to be burnt. The entire bridge. But the town of Wrightsville, where Columbia was sitting out on their rooftops and looking out their windows, smiling at the spectacle of this bridge burning, Wrightsville's town catches fire. And then everybody's hoo-hoos comes out with a bucket and a pail, and you name it, they got it. And Gordon's standing there saying, oh, what the heck, people? I thought y'all didn't have this kind of stuff.
Not Confederate buckets, really.
Yeah, they weren't Confederate buckets. Yeah, they weren't good enough, apparently. But he knows that bridge is gone. You're not putting it out. It's a total wash. So he's stuck. And he starts to see the frantic people of Wrightsville trying to put these businesses out, trying to put their houses out. And he feels bad. Who knew? General Gordon had a heart. And he tells regiments, you go here, you got the business district, you guys got houses. And his entire brigade goes to work. Some of them aren't happy about it. They're like, why should, they have pillaged towns in the South. Why should we help them? And Gordon goes, because that's who we are. Then they went and did it. This town would not be put out until 12 o'clock in the morning on June 29th. All right, Andre, we're going to come out, we're going to go straight down. So on this side of the river would have been an ironworks, a a foundry, and that foundry would not be hit by the fire. It would not be touched at all. And the business owner was happy about that. But when he went back up into town, he found that he had lost his house. There was nothing left. It was a charred ashes. So where he kept his business, he didn't quite make it with his house. Oh, here we go. We're going swimming. Honest for guys, don't take blood. It's holy crap, it's a little blood.
Around 8 o'clock.
8? Yeah.
Oh, 8.
That was your last year.
Okay.
For the bridge burning ceremony.
Oh, you've been in there before? You've seen it before?
Yeah.
So you watched it from the restaurant?
Yeah, right now, right there from the Brathy area.
Oh, you should come back.
Yeah.
Adam, they're gonna set the bridge on fire later today. You wanna come back to see it?
We are now leaving the Wrightsville John Wright restaurant here in Wrightsville. And sounding down, turning down onto Front Street. We are on the Wrightsville side of the river.
Which one's the thing that has
It's a Wrightsville different line.
Yes.
there is some like brick tunnels back there, brick walls. What is that?
That old
I'm
foundation,
sorry. Tunnel.
Brick.
the old foundation back there.
Oh, she thought about the iron ore place.
It was like brick foundation, brick tunnels, like
I have honestly, I do not know. Yeah. Whether they were here for businesses prior to what is there now, I think it's whatever that is, whatever business that is, or they were there back during the Civil War. I don't know. I know. I believe the Underground Railroad ran through Wrightsville as well. The Historical Society and the Diorama are open today here in Wrightsville. You may go visit them. I believe they're free to go in, and the largest depository, was unharmed. So where he lost one thing, the other thing was okay. And that's how a lot of townspeople and businesses work. If your business was down here, 9 times out of 10 it was gone. But your houses, some of them are gone, others, they remained. Now down here would have been where the lumber mill was. That lumber mill was gone. It did not survive the fire of 1863 from the bridge. But a William Lanus, he was a officer in the 87th Pennsylvania, and after the war he would come back to Wrightsville and he would rebuild his father's business, the lumber mill, for his father. I thought that was very nice. So if we're bored looking at it, it's his right. If it's Frick, it's his left. So I'm going to go with Frick, and we're going to say it's his left. We're on that left flank, and the only thing guarding this entire route are some cavalry troops. The U.S. The U.S. troopers. That's what they were called. That you can see how far this line extends, and that is all that was guarding this line. Now, Frick only had 1,500 troops to man a 2,800-foot defensive system. That means he had to leave about 10 feet in between each soldier. Now, if you're General Gordon, you're going to exploit those gaps. And that's exactly what he did. Now you can see where these streets are really, really narrow. Now think about being a Confederate soldier when you're used to battle lines and you're shoulder to shoulder with your comrade, and you're coming through these tiny little streets and you can't see that comrade no more. You're on your own, and you're in enemy territory. Despite it being a militia, you're still in danger. Can you feel the tension of what these Confederate soldiers would have had to go through? They don't know. They don't know these streets. They can get lost. They could completely lose track of their brigade in enemy territory. Just because you have a lot of Confederate sympathizers doesn't mean everybody is a Confederate sympathizer. Even here in Wrightsville. Yes, you have Confederate people here. That doesn't make you safe. people's yards, or it's just an open ground. Wrightsville wasn't this built up back in 1863. A lot of towns weren't. They didn't have the populations that we have today. When the Union militia would eventually start to retreat, they followed them because they knew where they were going. The Confederates didn't always know where they were going. Columbia then and scare them off over at Columbia. So your houses, they took damage, your churches took damage. And if you look at those churches today, you can see where they patched them up, where they look a little different in some spots, where they're more modern. Because they didn't tear them down to rebuild, they just patched up the damage. Some houses that still exist from 1863, they have mini ball damage to them. And you can see, if you walk around, not that I'm going to go tramping on anybody's property, but if you just happen to be walking around and you see little bullet holes in houses, that would be damage done from pot shots taken at each other from the militia and the Confederate Army. Rewalt house. It's down that way, we passed it. The Rewalt house, or the Maggie house, was where the mayor lived. And his daughter decided to come and spend time with him during the war, while her husband was a surgeon in the Union Army of the Potomac. And Gordon, she was so happy that he helped put the fire out at her house. She went and extended an early breakfast with him. For the next day, he goes, oh, I don't know. And she goes, no, please, I won't let you leave without me showing you some gratitude. He goes, okay, sure. So he eats breakfast with her. And he is so infatuated with her. And he asks her, are you a Confederate sympathizer? And she says, no. My husband is a surgeon in the Army of the Potomac. And he goes, oh, well, that's okay. No worries. And to his day, when he wrote his memoirs in the late 1890s, he never forgot Mary Rewalt. He was so impressed with her that he never forgot the young lady from Wrightsville. Anyway, Silas Smith will join the Army of the Potomac and he will be sent down into Virginia. And before he leaves, his family gives him a Bible, a small pocket Bible, and on the inside is engraved with his name and his address. Now, Silas Smith will be mortally wounded. And what I mean by mortally wounded is you can't recover. You're dying. There's nothing that can be done to save your life, but they can make you comfortable. So he will be captured and put into a Confederate hospital, and he will be surrounded by some Confederate soldiers. So this young boy would die alone, so far from home. And when he passes, he is put into an unmarked grave, like many Civil War soldiers were. But they take his Bible. And when they came up to Wrightsville, those same Confederate soldiers, and I'm not lying to you, this was a true story, they found that house. And they slept in that house overnight. They tidied it all up for the next day when they left. And they left the Bible on a table. When his parents came back home, because they were some of the ones that fled to Lancaster, when the Confederates were approaching Wrightsville, they found this Bible that they had given their son before he went off to war. It was the Confederates' way of saying, here's a little piece of your son back. We can't give you his body because we don't know where it's buried. But here's a little piece of him that you can have that we can return home to you. And that gave his parents comfort knowing what actually happened to their son. Like this is the Presbyterian church that was hit with artillery. This is the Presbyterian church that was hit with Canada's artillery. You can see where they would have patched it up if you look around it. You can see where there's damage, where it's crumbling, where it's a little bit older, where the newer stuff was. This church was here, it has seen war. Now, like many other churches and houses, some of these would have been used as hospitals. I'm not saying this one was, because they didn't stay here long enough, and there wasn't that many casualties or wounded in Wrightsville. But churches like this, they would have been used as a makeshift hospital throughout the Civil War, where it's a place of worship became a place of agony and bloody surgeries and death. But can you see where these streets are narrow? Where a Confederate soldier would have got lost? Gone completely around Union militiamen? I can see it. Especially when the Civil War, when you look at it, and you look at different battles, happened in open lands, not necessarily in towns. Very few battles actually happen in urban settings. Fredericksburg was one. Gettysburg was another. Very, very few. Vicksburg was one. Jackson, Mississippi was another. Very few happened within urban settings. They tried to keep as much battle away from civilians as possible. Armies were not looking to kill civilians. They were looking to kill each other, but not civilians. Did you know in rules of warfare, you cannot hurt a civilian? Now, if they become a casualty by accident, which happened, there's nothing you can do about that. But you cannot actually go target civilians. Yes, I know there are rules of warfare, believe it or not. How many of you knew that? Raise your hand. Okay, that's more than what most people know. They turn a blind eye. So this is the furthest north that the Civil War will come. It is the only time that Confederate troops will touch northern soil. Never again will any Confederate troop come further than Virginia after Gettysburg on July 3rd, and they retreat in the early mornings of July 4th. They will never step foot above Virginia. When you commit troops to an engagement, it doesn't matter how big the engagement is. It can be a full-fledged battle like what happens in Gettysburg, or it can be a small skirmish like what happens here on June 28th. But the minute you commit troops to an engagement, there is a winner and there is a loser. General Lee his army did not meet the objective here. That counts as a loss for General Lee. Even now, he never stepped foot in Wrightsville. General Lee would never make it to York County. He's still back in Cashtown, just below Gettysburg. This is a loss for General Lee. Now, have you ever been to Gettysburg and learned about the Gettysburg battle? Yeah? Well, if you haven't, we'll have a discussion later. Okay, I'll tell you all about it.
Gettysburg was the state.
Gettysburg was the biggest oops. That's what I call the Civil War. It was a chance that they met there. 10 roads leading in and out of one place. Yep, you're bound to run into each other, and that's what happens. They did, well, yes, along with other things, but that is the biggest myth when it comes to Gettysburg. A.P. Hill he will tell everybody, I went into Gettysburg looking for shoes. Only Richard Ewell had already been through Gettysburg prior to that, because we know he had to go through there to come to Wrightsville. There was nothing left. They had already ransacked that small little town. A.P. Hill didn't know a lot of it. But this was General Lee's first loss. Gettysburg loves to say that they gave General Lee his first loss along with the Army of Northern Virginia. No. Our nation's freedoms were saved on the banks of the Susquehanna, thank you to a bunch of average Joes from Columbia. So thank you for hanging out with me for the afternoon. I hope you have learned something. If you have any questions, I'll be here until my next tour loads up. Or you can find me at the library once a month at the General Welsh Post 118. It is the only Civil War roundtable in Lancaster County. I run it. I'm the founder of it. You can find us on Facebook and you can message me there. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.
Jumping them on?
Enjoy the rest of your day. On the ears.
Over the ears.
Yeah.